welcome back to the Orlando Premier Challenge stream. My name is Taylor Curry, and I am joined here today by Dimitri Warren.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, we got a really exciting match coming up for you, one that I am probably, I think it's about to be peak. I think it's going to be potentially one of the best matches I've seen in a while. We're going to see Elijah, I believe the last name's Tatum, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, Elijah Tatum and Riley Factura, the very same one who, he's just been running crazy up in the regionals right now. And Elijah down here in our locals is easily one of the best players in Florida. I think Elijah really has a lot to bring to the table, and he's incredibly intelligent when it comes to Pokemon. Personally, one of my favorite people to talk to.
Right, exactly. It's going to be so cool to see kind of the person who has been taking all of these regionals by storm and the person who's been topping and taking a lot of like really good places in these locals and PCs and MSSs kind of like have a little showdown.
We're seeing the regional level of things and the local level of things like they're finally coming at each other, and I think that is unbelievably exciting. I'm really excited to see what the two of them are bringing. I know that Riley, I believe, has a Kingambit on his team, and you can never complain about Kingambit.
Definitely
Kingambit is one of my favorite mons to watch and one of my favorite mons to deal with in general. I really do enjoy Kingambit and all that it has to offer. And generally, both the mons on both sides of things are, it's going to make for genuinely one of the most exciting matchups I think we've seen probably in the local scene as of yet. This is going to be a match for the ages.
Right, definitely. Like, back to the Kingambit, it is definitely a threat, especially in this regulation, and I feel like not a lot of people account for it.
No, definitely not. No one really seems to run calcs on Kingambit, especially with just how good it is. I think it's definitely underappreciated and definitely something that is to be taken seriously that isn't yet, and I think it's going to be sticking around for a while. So now we're finally seeing the players up on screen. See, I wasn't lying to you. We really do have Riley Factura and Elijah Tatum here in this game. I am so excited to see it.
And on Riley's side, we see that he has in Urshifu with the Rapid Strike style a Chien-Pao, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, Dragonite, Amogus, and that Kingambit. And then on Elijah's side, there's that Hisuian Goodra, Fluttermane, Thundurus Incarnate form, Iron Hands, Dragonite, and Chien-Pao.
Yeah, and honestly, this is going to be really, really exciting. We know that Hisuian Goodra really can make games go on for a long time, and it can definitely, the games that go on for a long time, it tends to make the user of the Hisuian Goodra win those very long games. And, it's the stall mon, I think, right now. Not in a bad way at all, but it's such a good defensive threat that it really should be taken seriously, and it really can be a pain in the butt to deal with. Then over on Riley's side, I mean, we have the Kingambit to deal with that. It can really build up a lot of damage quickly if you're not careful, especially if you're to flip it with your, Intimidates and the other sort of things like that. It's going to be a very interesting game, to say the least. Especially, I really want to see Kingambit versus Hisuian Goodra, I think. I want to see those two steel types clash. Not that it's really to be ideal for any player, but they are the two standout mons on this team, in my opinion. Maybe with the exception of Ogerpon, Hearthflame, and Thundurus Incarnate. I feel like those can also absolutely be playmakers here.
Right, but that Hisuian Goodra does have that Terra Fairy, and I know for a fact that that Kingambit is not going to want to hit a Fairy type, even though it does not have a Terra Blast on it. It does have Shelter, which it can use to make that Body Press even stronger, because I do believe that Body Press does use the defense stat rather than the attack or special attack.
Absolutely, and I believe, is the Kingambit running Swords Dance as well? Which kind of Kingambit set are we looking at today?
I think we are looking at a Black Glasses, like, just fully offensive set.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm really excited to see that then. We can see Black Glasses Kingambit puts in a lot of work. It really gets kind of that easy damage buff without sacrificing too much. Yeah, you're not getting as much out of your other non-dark moves, but with Sucker Punch and Kowtow Cleave, you're going to be doing so much damage with those Black Glasses that it can really start to add up in a way that not a lot of other mons can. On top of also, threatening Intimidate mons, we're not going to see that really come up here. We don't have any mons over on Elijah's side that are really threatening Intimidate, but they all have different other options of dealing with it.
Right, and I feel like that, honestly, with that Terra Dragon, it can definitely make a lot of Ogerpons kind of quiver in fear because they won't be doing as much damage as they normally would to a Kingambit.
Big time, yeah. Terra Dragon's really interesting on, especially with the Black Glasses. It's going to be very fun to see.
And we are going to get right into this round with Riley leading with Chien-Pao and Urshifu, and Elijah running with the classic Pao Knight.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of physical threats here on the field right now, but honestly, nothing to punish it, which I think is very interesting. We're going to see a lot of things die very quickly, I think, in this game. Maybe perhaps, aside from the Hisuian Gudra, of course, we're going to see just a lot of damage get thrown around, and I'm really excited to see it. Again, I'm a hyper offense lover. I love to see things like this, and I want to see them hit each other hard.
Right, there's definitely nothing wrong with the hyper offense. It definitely can end games or win you games really, really fast, but it is always so exciting to see in a stream match.
Either way, we're not going to be here very long, I don't think. So, yeah, now we're currently waiting on Elijah to make his decisions, but we're definitely going to see some interesting things right out the gates. Now, Elijah's going to drop the Chien-Pao. Now, the interesting thing with this is if it's going into the Urshifu, you know, the Sword of Ruin is still going to be a pretty big deal, helping out the Dragonite on the other side of things. So,
Right.
I think that's a really clever use of, you know, switching out Elijah's Chien-Pao and saving it for a time where maybe it's going to be a little more useful to him. Of course, we're going to see the Dragonite come out with the extreme speed, and that's going to be doing a pretty significant amount of damage, if I'm being honest.
Right, I feel like that nobody is going to want to really take that extreme speed.
That being said, the Urshifu takes it, and he does manage to survive. So now Urshifu's going to get an Aqua Jet off into the Dragonite, you know, ultimately still getting a good bit of damage off. But Dragonite is going to take a Sacred Sword right after taking that Aqua Jet, breaking, you know, any sign of, you know, Dragonite's hope of staying alive here. So now we're going to get to see, you know, what is Elijah going to do to meet up to this? You know, how is Riley going to, you know, not let him adapt?
Right, exactly. And I feel like with also Riley making Elijah burn his Terra very early on in the game, I feel like that's going to give Riley almost like a leg up.
Riley definitely seems to have a leg up here, both with one Mon and with one, you know, with his Terra usage still being able to be used by him, I think is a huge deal. And Riley's definitely off to a good start here. But Elijah's a great player, and I really think he can bring this back.
Right, but honestly, that kind of thinking on Riley's part is what wins him those regionals and makes him top cut. Like, I think his lowest place is top 8.
Yeah, I mean, he's done really, really good every tournament he's gone to so far. So I am absolutely, this is such a good matchup.
Yes, this is so exciting, and I'm very excited to see kind of how that Hisuian Gudra is going to stay around and if it's going to keep on spamming shelters and being able to get that damage out for body press.
It's Hisuian Gudra. It's always going to stick around. It's not going anywhere. Alrighty, so now we are looking at a pretty interesting turn where we have a lot of really good defensive threats here right now, but Chien-Pao is going to help Urshifu deal with that with the Hisuian Gudra. Now, Gudra is rocking the shell armor, so, you know, it's still going to be an absolutely amazing, you know, Mon to take that amount of damage. It's just going to, you know, it's not quite as defensive as it maybe would like to be over on Elijah's side. We're going to see Riley go for a Terra Ghost, probably to block out a Fake Out from hands.
And we're also going to see that Gudra protect, but Urshifu is going to do an Aqua Jet, doing quite a bit of damage into that Iron Hands.
Followed by the Ice Bender from the Chien-Pao, also going into the hands, dealing a good chunk of damage. But Iron Hands is Iron Hands, and tends to stick around as well. So we have two really bulky Mons over on Elijah's side right now. Now, Iron Hands does then meet back with the, I believe that was the Thunder Punch?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Thunder Punch immediately, you know, that's a pretty clean sweep there for taking out the Urshifu, and is going to definitely put Elijah in a bit better of a position here. He definitely is making some great plays in order to keep, you know, Riley at bay here, especially with Riley, you know, being ready for that fake out. Elijah, you know, any normal player would think, okay, well, I could fake out, I could go into that, but, you know, there's always the Terra Ghost Chien-Pao. It's always a threat. You always need to have that on the mind, and Elijah knew that, and, you know, I think that was a very smart play.
Exactly. And now Riley has the Fire Ogre Pawn out on the stage, and I feel like it's going to be able to dish out quite some damage.
Absolutely. Fire Ogre Pawn right next to Chien-Pao right now is really, really threatening for the Gudra, and it does look like it's going to come out. Ooh, but into the Iron Hands, taking out the hands. Wow. So, yeah, the hands is just immediately kind of taken out of play here, and it's up to Gudra to see if it's going to be able to, you know, pull itself together. Getting off a body press, not doing that 30, 40%. And the Gudra is also able to get some of its health back. It's going to really need to play defensively here if it's wanting to get some of that bulk back that it really needs.
Definitely. And now we're going to see the Chien-Pao from Elijah's side And I guess now it's going to be a battle of Champals, but that Ivy Cudgel does not look very great for Elijah's Champal.
No, not one bit. It could definitely disintegrate it if he's not careful. But the one thing to keep in mind is, like, most Gym Bows, they got that Focus Sash. They're ready to take a one hit. Like, you've got to two hit them usually. And I
Exactly.
think Riley knows that. And that's why, Riley's going for the follow me here. We see the Ice Spinner come out into Ogerpon. That's going to very much so be lethal for the Ogerpon. It never goes well for it. That grass type on it really definitely weakens it a good bit here.
Oh, and that Champal was Life Orb and not a Focus Sash.
That's very interesting. All right, so yeah, the Chien-Pao goes down with a crit. Wow, that did a good bit of damage, and yeah, I mean, Chien-Pao is definitely out here. So now we get to see Goodra comes in with a heavy slam. It does about a quarter of Chien-Pao's health, and yeah, I mean, we're seeing one of the best offensive mons here in the field at the moment with one of the best defensive mons, and I think it's going to be real interesting.
And now we're going to get the Amoonguss out, and this Amoonguss, I think, is actually pretty special because it has Grass Knot.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that could be really huge, especially in matchups like this where you're dealing with really heavy mons. Now, Grass Knot obviously is not very effective against Goodra, but
Right.
as a Grass Knot lover myself, I do like it a good bit. Of course, we're going to see the classic Amoonguss style of just throwing out a Rage Powder and taking that damage for his friend over there, letting Chien-Pao go ahead and take out Goodra, ensuring Riley's victory here.
What a good first round. I feel like Riley just absolutely blew out of the park, but Elijah was also able to make some really great plays.
It was an absolutely high-tier game. I was super happy to see this go down. I mean, you could tell immediately that both players are really having to put in the work to think about what they're going to
Yes.
do next. I mean, these are two big dogs here, and
Right.
I'm so unbelievably excited. Like, I want to see how the set plays out. I want to see if Elijah can adapt. I want to see just, when you put these two great minds to the test, I want people to push them forward. So
Right.
yeah, Riley's taken game one, and yeah, I believe he's in a pretty strong position here. He just really needs to, keep in mind what exactly is going to be going down. We have a lot of physical threats on the field, something we don't really get to see terribly often in this meta, especially Hisuian Arcanine and Landorus Therian running around.
Right.
It's very nice to see non-intimidated physical attackers being able to go all out, which I think is just genuinely super exciting. I know it's a small thing, but it's something I find exciting. And even if Riley has, Defiant Kingambit, it's still fun to see. I still like to see
Right.
it here.
Exactly. And I feel like that's something to mention is that physical attackers, this regulation, have just been so powerful, even with the Intimidate users. Like, I do feel like this is a very physically dominant regulation.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's physically dominant, but it's also just as well dominated by, like I said, those Intimidate mons. Hisuian
Right.
Arcanine and Landorus Therian are on almost every team. Like, you see them
Exactly.
so much. So with, it's very interesting. I mean, I believe, yeah, every one of Riley's mons are all physical, and we do have Elijah over there with the bit of a special threat with Fluttermane. Not a bit of a special threat. That's a pretty big special threat.
Pretty big
But
special threat.
it is definitely something that is exciting to see. It's two very physical teams, and I find that to be really interesting to see that that's where the meta's gone, and, that's what we're dealing with. Now, when you're looking at Riley's team, it's very interesting to see that, you have Urshifu and Kingambit and Dragonite, actually, which I believe typically runs Inner Focus nowadays. Those three mons, while they're some of the strongest physical attackers in the meta, they also handle Intimidate very well. So I believe
Exactly.
that's why the three of them are honestly great calls. Over at Elijah's side, though, you also have things like Kazooie and Goodra, which, yeah, Kazooie and Goodra is made to take down Urshifu, in my opinion. It can really deal with these things well, and it can really, if you play it right, it's great, and we love to see it do well.
Right, exactly. And I would really like to see Riley's Kingambit come out on the field in order to clean up like a late game situation. I feel like that would be
Yeah, big time.
really amazing.
And now we're going into game two. Looks like our leads are Fluttermane and Iron Hands over on Elijah's side, and then Chien-Pao and Ogerpon over on Riley's side. So we definitely have Ogerpon right out the gates. I see threatening Fluttermane big time here. Fluttermane is not a very defensively bulky mon in that regard, but we do have the Chien-Pao also, weakening his own Ogerpon to the Iron Hands. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see, but the Fluttermane, it could put some work in here if Elijah knows what he's doing.
Right, exactly. And I do believe that this Fluttermane is also running Power Gem.
Interesting. Yeah, so that can really play well into dealing with things like Chen Pao. Having that rock type damage is such a huge deal. Now, you do have the fairy coverage, which is pretty good into Chen Pao, usually with the dark type, assuming it doesn't Terra. But Chen Pao, no matter what, isn't a great pick here, and Riley knows that. So that, he's pulling him out of there. He has plenty of things. While he was giving him a bit of an advantage here, whereas I think Ogerpon is a little more physically threatening Mon. You need to play more defensively here to see what's going on with the Fluttermane. Now, with both of these Mons, Amoonguss can take it. Fluttermane can, and Ogerpon could just set up the spiky shield. And he's good to go.
Right, that does do a little bit of chip damage onto Iron Hands, which honestly, any kind of damage on Iron Hands matters.
Yeah, Iron Hands will be sticking around a good bit. We see a Dazzling Gleam come out, and it's going to go just into the Amoonguss, not doing a ton of damage, but, what's new with Amoonguss? And yeah, we're really looking at a pretty interesting game. So we know that Riley has, Chen Pao in the back. Odds are Elijah probably has it too. I mean, Chen Pao is such an integral Mon here to this matchup, I think, because of all the physical stuff. But you have to know right when to play it. There's a perfect time for both sides. There's times where it really, really matters. We also could see Thundurus come into play potentially, but I'm not super sure. I think we're going to see, this is kind of the all-out, just duking it out. We're seeing a boxing match right now. You know what I mean?
And we're going to see the Dragonite on Elijah's side instead of the Thundurus. And
you see an Ivy Cudgel come right on into the Dragonite. It's not very effective, so it was a pretty good call over on Elijah's side. We see a Drain Punch fly into the Ogerpon, doing a significant amount of damage and negating the chip that Iron Hands has taken. But now we're looking at Amoonguss getting a Spore off, and that's a pretty big deal. It doesn't really matter. Iron Hands is slow, but Amoonguss is slower. And now that means that, it's going to take a while for Iron Hands to really get out of this funk that it's now in because of the Amoonguss. And it puts Riley yet again in a pretty good place to, either Dragonite's going to go out or, he got to call what's coming in next. And I think, this is one of the biggest, most important decisions, I think, of what kind of damage is going into that slot.
Right, because I feel like that if Elijah switches into either the Fluttermane or even a Chen Pao, I feel like that Ivy Cudgel is going to do so much more damage. But even if it still hits the Dragonite, it's still going to do quite a bit.
Absolutely, but the Ogerpon's also pretty low here, and I think that's something that Riley needs to take in mind. He's going to be one of his most important damaging Mons, though, here when it comes to dealing with things like the Fluttermane, like the Chen Pao. Ogerpon is pretty important in this matchup, I think.
And that Amoonguss is going to take an Extreme Speed from Dragonite, but is going to use a Citrus Berry to heal up. And that Ogerpon is going to do quite a bit of damage.
That critical hit is a pretty big deal, I think.
Definitely.
Wow, okay, so now we have the Iron Hands has gone down with the Spore. It's gotten his turn 1 sleep off, but now Dragonite's following in its footsteps. So I don't think we're going to see Iron Hands go down. Amoonguss is not a very physically threatening Pokemon, or any kind of threatening, if I'm being honest. Amoonguss, like, in terms of damage. The Spores, Amoonguss has done what it's needed to do. It's a threat, it hurts, and, Riley knows that. But now Amoonguss doesn't really threaten to finish things off like it needs to. Iron Hands is still full health, and a full health Iron Hands means it's still probably got 2 or 3 turns.
And I feel like that if Elijah had brought out the Hisuian Goodra, I feel like that the Amoonguss could even threaten it with a Clear Smog.
Absolutely. The Amoonguss is running Clear Smog?
Yes, it is.
That's not something we see every day. I'm pretty excited to see that. That could really be a big deal when it comes to, making sure that the Goodra doesn't run away with the game. I mean, honestly, I think that's a great call to bring that. The Dragonite survives! Wow, okay, that's pretty excellent for the Dragonite there. It could potentially get its turn 1 sleep off, and then follow up with an Extreme Speed, and actually potentially get some damage off here. But it has to wake up right now.
Wow. That was crazy.
That was really, really cool to watch. I don't know what exactly that thing would have lived on, but I am very impressed that Dragonite survived that. That was genuinely phenomenal. But I guess, it got us a little bit primed up with the crit there. We thought that in my head anyways, I pictured that Ivy Cudgel doing a good bit of damage. And in reality, Dragonite's it's able to take it pretty well. I mean, it's a Dragon type. It's immune to that stuff. But he is not going to wake up, and he is going to go down. Now, that seems like a pretty intentional play over on Elijah's part. I don't believe, did he go for the Extreme Speed, or did he have the proc there?
I am not entirely sure because we did not get to see
his
side.
So yeah, with that, when it comes to that case, then that was a matter of just the sleep turns. Then you can only do so much whenever it comes to that side of things. you just have to hope your Mons wake up, and if they don't, they don't. Now, Fluttermane does come out, and, Fluttermane, it can deal pretty well with the Ogerpon, I think, at this point, with how low its health is, but then it's going to be having to prepare itself to take a Spore and then deal with the other of Riley's Mons that he has left, which I believe is just about everything, right? No, Dragonite went down. No, I get a little confused by the graphic. I apologize. But yeah, Riley still has Mons. He still has stuff that he can meet up with, and he's still absolutely ready to bring it if he needs to.
Right, exactly. I do really think this could be Riley's game unless Elijah is able to put on a lot of offensive pressure with that Fluttermane, or if that Iron Hands is able to wake up and potentially get off a Drain Punch or two into that Ogerpon.
Which respect where respect's due. Fluttermane, if you have any Mon you really need some offensive pressure out of, Fluttermane's the Mon. You want that Mon. You want it there to be, you want there to be just as much of that Fairy type damage on the field as possible. But we are going to see Ogerpon go for the Terra Fire and get that attack boost that it's now going to get. And Ogerpon has become a much bigger threat than it was before, especially with Iron Hands still taking a while to even wake up if it does. No matter what, something on the field is taking a good bit of damage. And we're going to see Amoonguss go for the Rage Powder. Fluttermane is going to opt for the Shadow Ball. Honestly, that's a pretty good pick, knowing that the Rage Powder could come out at any second. Amoonguss takes a good bit of damage, but it just survives. And now we're going to see the Ogerpon take out the Fluttermane as well and get a good bit of its HP back. On top of Hands still having to wake up, which I do believe it wakes up in this next turn or two.
And that was a one-hit KO,
That was indeed a one-hit KO. That was awesome. But the Hands does wake up. It's going to go for an Ice Punch into the Amoonguss, and Amoonguss goes down.
Really, really great play from Elijah to offer that Ice Punch, because I feel like that if he had tried to go into the Ogerpon, it would have just done a tiny bit of chip damage. Probably thinking, oh, Riley's going to Terastallize this Mon.
Yeah, like it's definitely something he'd need to call there. But honestly, Riley's in a very dominant position here. I don't really see too much of a way in which Elijah's able to pull himself out unless Hands really is able to blow me away with some defensive utility here. We do see the Hisuian Goodra also, which deals with this quite well, I think. We're going to see Urshifu come out, and yeah, this has definitely gotten pretty interesting, if I'm being honest. I forgot that you had the Hisuian Goodra in the back. So, wow. Okay, so now we're going to see the next bit of things be, I think Urshifu is going to probably have to target down the Iron Hands. It really puts down a lot of offensive pressure, but again, it's not quite as useful into Hisuian Goodra. Hisuian Goodra is just good against it. And honestly, Hisuian Goodra is just in a great position here. I think it's really happy to be here, and it has, it's ready to do what it does best, don't you think?
Right, exactly. And I feel like that if the Iron Hands can survive whatever onslaught that Urshifu or the Ogerpon puts on it, I feel like that it can go for a Thunder Punch to possibly knock out that Urshifu.
Absolutely, yeah. It could, I mean, Iron Hands is such a huge thret to it if you're not careful. We're going to see Hisuian Goodra go for the Terra Fairy. It's a classic. It's going to be able to take so much good damage. And it ultimately, it just makes it super bulky and means that Urshifu cannot go for the fighting type moves into it as easily as it otherwise would have. It is going to go for Asserting Strikes into Iron Hands, which I think is going to do a bit of damage here. Yeah, so it does about 30%, which, for Iron Hands, that's pretty good.
Right.
But that does importantly mean then that the damage is not going into Hisuian Goodra. We're going to see the Ivy Cudgel also come out into the Iron Hands and ultimately wipe it out. All right. So, yeah, now we're just seeing Hisuian Goodra stand on its own.
Right. I do definitely think that this is Riley's game, unless this Hisuian Goodra is able to clutch it out with those shelters and potentially a body press.
More likely than you think. We're dealing with two very physical Mons here that aren't able to overcome the shell armor. So, Riley's going to have to get a lot of damage off very fast. And if he's unable to do that, then the Goodra will become probably something that he's unable to deal with.
I feel like that with a Chien-Pao switch, if you're able to lower that defense, I feel like that could possibly...
Absolutely, yeah, you definitely have a good point there, especially next to the Ogerpon. The Ogerpon is the main thing that's threatening damage here. We are going to see a Surging Strikes come out into Hisuian Goodra, doing not much damage, unfortunately. But, the Goodra is definitely sticking around here for the most part.
Yeah, those Surging Strikes, instead of big old Surging Strikes, they're definitely like Surging Flicks at the Hisuian Goodra. But it's still able to hold on and get another shelter off.
Yeah, and then but the other important thing to keep in mind here is that Amoonguss is out of the game. The Amoonguss isn't coming back. There's no more Clear Smog to threaten Goodra. Goodra is ready. It's ready to do its job, and I'm really excited to see if it's able to meet the competition.
Right. It would be really, really cool if it could get possibly a one-hit KO on one of these Mons, or even just a two-hit.
With enough shelters, it definitely will be. And it only needs one more shelter before it's all maxed out. And now Riley's at a point where he, needs to think about how he's going to get this damage off. You really he's taking a second to think about it. And, it's something that can be this is what makes Pokemon great, I think. It's just, how can I kill this thing? Because, like,
Right.
especially in this meta, we see a lot of really big things. We have Hisuian Gudra. We have Iron Hands. We have just so many things that really can just threaten stuff. And we're going to see another Surging Strikes come out into Gudra. Gudra is going to ultimately, I think, go for that last shelter, if I'm being honest. But, I mean, we'll see. We see the Ivy Cudgel. I'm interested to see how much damage this does, because I feel like this is going to be the main thing that's going to do anything for Riley. So, yeah, that does a good bit of damage, if I'm being honest. We're going to see a Body Press come out and instantly kill the Ogerpon. And now we're going to see things really start to get interesting from here. We're going to see the Chien-Pao come out. And, yeah, that's going to drop the Gudra's defense a little bit. But the Urshifu being on the field isn't quite as handy, because it's just not able to get as much off into that Gudra. The Ogerpon was very, very integral to this game, I think. But now we get to see where the Chien-Pao is coming from. And it has a couple of different options here, too. I think, of anything, Chien-Pao is going to be the main thing that could get Riley out of this game. But Riley looks like ultimately he's going to go for a forfeit, and I don't disagree with that decision at all. I think it got pretty rough there. As soon as Gudra started to get set up, the game really started to sweep into Elijah's favor.
Yeah, definitely such a good round for Elijah, and I think this is going to be our first game 3.
Yeah, like I said, this is genuinely such an exciting matchup that, like, oh, God, it's so good. It's so good. I really do think these are two of the smartest guys in Florida right now, and I really want to see that, like, make this count for the final round. This is an important round. It matters. Believe in the goo. Yes, believe in Hisuian Gudra. And ultimately, like, a lot of the people I talk to who run Hisuian Gudra, everyone has that mentality of, you got to believe in the goo. And honestly, that came to be what won Elijah this round. It really looked bad for Elijah until Hisuian Gudra came out in the end. As soon as Among Us went down, Hisuian Gudra had a chance. And when Hisuian Gudra has a chance, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think, honestly, that's why Hisuian Gudra, I think, is one of my favorite mons this reg, is that it is one of those mons that no matter how bad of a position you can be in, it can probably pull yourself back. And I think, Elijah knows that, and that's why he's bringing it.
Right. And I feel like with, like, the moveset of, like, Shelter, having the ability of Shell Armor, and having, like, moves such as, like, Body Press, you could even go for, like, a Terra Blast, like Terra Fairy. And I've even seen someone run Life 2 on their Hisuian Gudra, which can be a real pain in the butt if you're fighting against it.
It turns Gudra into not only an even bulkier mon, but it makes it a great supportive mon as well. It just becomes nearly impossible to kill.
Right, and we are going to be getting into our third round, and it is going to be the Fluttermane and the Dragonite on Elijah's side, and the Urshifu and the Chien-Pao on Riley's.
So yeah, we're kind of seeing a similar opening to that game too, where we see the Fluttermane coming out early and getting its damage off. And honestly, it does threaten a good bit of things here in the field. I think Fluttermane was a great bring here.
Right, exactly. And if that Urshifu does not terastallize, it can get some super effective damage using the Dazzling Gleam.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're definitely going to see some good things come out of it. Riley definitely has to think about that Fluttermane. Fluttermane is something that you cannot just put off to the side. You need to know what you're dealing. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you're dealing with. You need to know what kind of Fluttermane it is, and that's the only way you're going to deal with it most of the time, because otherwise Fluttermane will just knock things out, and you've got to be very careful with it. That being said, though, Elijah was pretty careful to get the Fluttermane on out of there. Honestly, again, while I think Fluttermane is a great threat, I do think it is potentially threatened by a lot. Now, the switch into Hisuian Gudra, I believe, is very smart.
Right.
I love that decision. I think because Fluttermane is not a very defensively bulky mon, it was probably getting targeted down. Of course, we're about to see that happen, but no matter what, we're seeing two very bulky mons come out. Of course, we see the Surging Strike come into Gudra, which pretty much isn't going to do too much, if I'm being honest. It looks like we get about, I'd say that's what, about an eighth of health. And then we're also going to see the Chien-Pao come out with an Ice Spinner into Iron Hands. Now, honestly, that's not quite as bad for Riley. I think Riley would want to get that damage off, and, Ice Spinner is a pretty good way of doing that into hands, from Riley's perspective anyways.
Right, and I feel like that with Riley's side, he's kind of going for a more like offensive play, while Elijah is, I think, trying to tough it out for these first couple of rounds by bringing in his two possibly bulkiest mons on his team.
No, not possibly. Those are definitely two of the bulkiest mons in the meta right now. And yeah, that definitely seems to be the strategy that Elijah's going for. It's what won him the game last time. Exactly. So I don't blame him for going this route at all. But I do think Riley threatens a lot of damage out here. Hisuian Gudra is going to go for the Protect, so that means that that Chien-Pao isn't going to really be getting much damage off into the Goodra if it goes that route. I mean, we'll be getting any off, of course, but, the only other way getting around that Protect, yeah, it's the Urshifu, but the nice part about being Goodra is that, again, the Urshifu doesn't matter a whole lot to the Goodra. It's pretty much ready to take it. We're going to see the Ice Spinner come out into Hands, and Hands is going to go down. So that was a great call from Riley, honestly.
Right, definitely.
You see Riley, he was able to call that Protect. He knew that even though he threatened the Goodra, it's Goodra. It's going to Protect. You know what to do at that point. And again, the Ice Spinner is not ever a bad tool into the Iron Hands. It's not going to kill it outright. But, if your opponent isn't careful who's using the hands, it can really start to add up. We're going to see that Flutter Mane come out once again. I do think this is a pretty good pick. We're still not seeing too much, things that can take the Flutter Mane grade. Now, if they can kill it before it gets off, that's awesome. But we're going to have to see ultimately how these speed tiers play out and, who's going to take this. Because I think this is one of the most important interactions of the game.
Right, and that Flutter Mane is not running a booster energy. It is running a choice spec, so it will not be getting that speed boost.
Awesome. Yeah, so it definitely won't be a very fast Flutter Mane then. We do see a Terra Fairy over onto the Hisuian Goodra. I don't blame this one bit yet again. I think it's just such a good type for Goodra, especially when dealing with both the Chien-Pao and the Urshifu. Flutter Mane is taking a good bit of damage from the Surging Strikes and is definitely going down here. So now we're just going to have to see, how much damage can Chien-Pao get off into the Hisuian Goodra.
I feel like Ice Spinner would be the only answer.
Yeah, I do think it's the only thing that's really going to be doing much of any damage, and, Riley knows that. Again, we're talking about, a world-class player.
Exactly.
I think he's very, very, very good. Now, Goodra is going to get its first Shelter off, but it took a lot of damage to be able to do that. Now, of course, the Urshifu doesn't really threaten it, and the Chien-Pao maybe didn't outright get 50%, but with that Leftovers recovery, I think this is a moment where Leftovers recovery is a pretty big deal to making sure that Hisuian Goodra survives. Because now, maybe it could be left up to a roll as if Chien-Pao kills it next round, but or you'd have to double with Urshifu is another way of dealing about that. But it's still not a great option, and it still could be punished if Elijah is able to call, what's coming into what.
Right, and I feel like that if he were to go for that Sacred Sword, it would just be a little bit of chip damage, and even with the Sucker Punch, that Hisuian Goodra is firing off Shelter, so it would fail.
Yeah.
So I feel like Ice Spinner is definitely a great call from Riley.
Absolutely, yeah. And now also whenever, Ice Spinner is just a great move here. It's awesome. You have it to deal with Dragonite. You have it to deal with Hisuian Goodra. You do got to be a little careful because the Dragonite could hit you pretty hard if you're, if you're not careful. But right now, I would say that, it's still pretty much anyone's game. We have Riley out here with the very, very offensive threats and Elijah out here with the very, very defensive threat. The defensive threat, in my opinion.
The Hisuian defensive threat.
Absolutely. So we're going to see Chien-Pao go for the Terra Ghost. I think that's a great play here. Cancels out Dragonite's extreme speed. We're going to ultimately see if that's what it's going to go for. And, wow, okay, so Elijah called that. And it goes over into Urshifu. Urshifu's going to take a good bit of damage from that and knock back Goodra with a Surging Strikes. Now we're going to ultimately have to see, is Chien-Pao able to get this damage off that will, ultimately be lethal to Goodra.
Right, and I think...
Oh, it goes directly
he's
to the
going
Dragonite.
into
So
the
yeah,
Dragonite.
that's an instant kill for the Dragonite. The Dragonite does not handle ice well, and, gives the Dragonite goodbye beyond the shadow of a doubt. But that was a pretty big one-hit KO. We're going to see the Body Press come out into Urshifu, though, and Urshifu goes down. So that's yet again, two Mons. We're just trading punches. This is exactly what I wanted out of these two players.
Exactly. Both of these players are playing out of their minds, making such great calls,
Absolutely.
while they're also adapting to each other's playstyles.
I think we've seen people on both sides, or both of them on both sides, be able to kind of think about, what's the most logical thing? What are they going to go for? And, they have to respect each other's players. I mean,
Right.
I don't know wholly what their relationship is, but, a lot of people know these guys. And both of these guys
Exactly.
are just I'm so hyped that we got to see this match.
This honestly, it feels like the hype of a finals match, even though we are only in round 2.
Yeah, well, we're not quite there yet. I'm definitely excited to see what kind of finals we have, because as you guys can see, we are stacked today. We really have some amazing players out there. We're going to see a Heavy Slam come out into the Amoonguss. Deals about a quarter of damage. Amoonguss is going to use Spore, so that's going to be a pretty big deal, especially with the Ogerpon coming out and, threatening that offensive damage, and Goodra's unable to shelter or protect to deal with it. We're going to still see a bit of leftover recovery, but I don't think it's going to be terribly useful.
Right, I do feel like that even though Riley has already used his Terra, I still feel like that the Ogerpon is still going to be able to get some really good damage on that Hisuian Goodra.
Yeah, I pretty much think this is game. I think Amoonguss has the clear smog. Goodra's unable to set up more shelters. It's unable to Amoonguss, if you want to use Goodra, you have to kill Amoonguss. I feel like there's not really any way of dealing with that. Because then Amoonguss comes out with the clear smog, does a lot of damage, honestly.
Wow.
It's Amoonguss. I never expect that much damage out of it. Especially the Goodra.
I
But
forgot it did damage. I just haven't seen it in forever.
but yeah, and so that resets the stat changes, and this is probably game here.
Yeah, and that means that Riley Factura is our winner of round 2.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So yeah, now we're going to see. I'm really interested to see how Riley carries on, but he thought that match out so well, and there was genuinely
Yes.
so many parts where. Especially like in the mid game of every single round, it was just so close. Like
Yes.
I could go either way, and I really think both players really like. That was a battle of titans, and I think they lived up to the hype. It wasn't just a 2-0 clean sweep for anybody. It was just very, very good. And yeah, I think ultimately that final round, it just came down to Amoonguss not going down beforehand, if that makes sense.
Because I do feel like that with Amoonguss going down in round 2, that kind of was where Riley wasn't able to quite get the win, even though it was really close, and how Elijah was able to win the game with the Suzu and Gudra. Because like you said, if you want to use Suzu and Gudra, you got to kill Amoonguss.
Absolutely, yeah. And so ultimately that's what it came down to. And, but Riley was very good at positioning the Amoonguss and keeping it out of harm's way until it was just the Gudra left. And then the Amoonguss was like, all right, bro, let's go. Like, you're not doing anything. So, yeah, it was genuinely such a phenomenal match to watch.
Yeah, and I feel like even with the Chien-Pao, like I feel like using Ice Spinner was such a great move that I feel like covered for everything that Elijah was bringing. Even if it wasn't like always super effective, like it was still able to dish out some really good damage, especially into the Zui and Gudra.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, all the Ice Spinner damage we saw come out of Chien-Pao was really handy. I mean, I really loved, I think my favorite play that I saw there, though, was that opening of round 2. Super smart on Elijah's part where he switched out that Flutter Mane right into the Gudra.
Yes.
Was that round 2 or round 3? I get those a little confused.
I think
now,
that was round 2.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, like that was such a smart play in my opinion. It turned Flutter Mane into a pretty good pivot.
Yeah.
He was able to kind of account for like, okay, I know the Urshifu's sitting here. Go do your thing, Gudra.
Right, exactly.
But I think Gudra, like, you got to be careful with that. You can't send Gudra out too early. Gudra, I think, is very much it's a mon that thrives in the late game.
Yes, it definitely is made to clean up, because I feel like that if you bring it in the early game, it can easily get KO'd if you're not careful, or it can be put to sleep, like how we saw with Amoonguss in the 3rd game.
Put to sleep, Clear Smog. There's a lot of threats like that running around right now. I haven't seen Clear Smog Amoonguss in a little bit, but I mean, Riley Factura definitely called it. I think there's some pretty big deals with a lot of setup mons currently in the meta, and yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty interesting to watch and just see Clear Smog Amoonguss doing its thing.
Right.
So yeah, but anyways, we'll be headed off to break now. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys again in round 3.
Bye, guys.